Who can say where the road goes, where the day flows? Only time. And who can say if your love grows as your heart shows? Only time.
Good morning. Welcome back to history class, where we've been talking about the people of Central America. And this week we're talking about the Mayans. We talked a little bit about them yesterday. So what kind of people were the Mayans like? Well, in many ways they were much like the Aztecs and much like the people of the Olmec that we mentioned earlier. They started out as farmers because the land that they chose to settle in was very good for farming. And as they slowly built up over the years, they became more and more powerful. Now, one of the main differences is that the Aztecs, they all came together pretty early on in their culture and set up their empire. But the Mayans, they set up a monarchy. They had kings, but there wasn't really one. Most of the time, there wasn't really one king of all the Mayans. They would have these big cities that would grow up. And people would come to these cities. These cities would get bigger and bigger and bigger. And then every once in a while, one of these cities would get so big that it would take over all the land of the Mayans. And that would sort of like be their capital. Until one of the other cities got bigger and they would take over. And there's a lot of fighting in between them. The first city, probably the most important one, is one I mentioned earlier, yesterday. The city of, and I'm going to put the name up here because it's very hard to pronounce and probably even harder to spell, Teotihuacan. This was basically the first Mayan capital, Teotihuacan. Yes, it was built in what is now Mexico, and it basically ran the Mayan culture and civilization for many years. After that, there were some others, such as Caracol, Mayapan, and Chichen Itza. I've actually been to Chichen Itza. I've seen the building that you're looking at right now. It's one of their most famous pyramids. The Mayans built loads of these pyramids. They're all over the place in southern Mexico and Central America. Because they thought it was very important to worship their gods. They built these big giant stone pyramids, then put a little temple there on top of them. And then you remember last week we talked about how the Aztecs had human sacrifices to worship their gods. Well, the Mayans did the same thing. They would bring people up to the top of those temples and sacrifice them to their gods. So like the Aztecs, it was a very bloody culture. Also like the Aztecs, they ate a lot of corn and cocoa beans. They also had a game that was very important to them. A game that was a whole lot, in fact, like football. Now, me personally, I don't like football. I know that everybody in Mexico and Central America and South America loves football. I think it's boring. But, if you like it, yeah, that's fine. I'm not going to make fun of you for something that you like that I don't like. But the Mayans, they had a game of football because they had a ball. It was made out of skins and filled with nuts and things like that. They would move it. They would kick it around the field with their feet until they got to the goal, where they could pick it up and throw it through the goal. The winners, whoever won their football game, they would get to go through the crowds and take all of the clothes and the stuff that belonged to anybody they could catch who was watching the game. The losers were not so lucky. They got to be sacrificed to the gods. So yes, you wanted to make sure you really played a good game of football. One of the reasons that football was so important to them is because some of their heroes in their religious stories were football players. It was these guys. They're called the Hero Twins. Their real names, which I'm going to try to pronounce for you, and I will almost certainly get wrong. were Hunapu and Xbalanque. I think that's how you pronounce them. I don't know. There aren't any Mayans around that I can ask. These were heroes to the Mayans because these two were so good at football and so powerful that they challenged death to a game of football and won. Yes, that's how good they were. And they were so powerful that when they grew up, one of them became the sun and the other one became the moon. By the way, did this happen? No, this did not happen. This is just one of the many stories that the Mayans would tell about their gods. But because of this, the people would play football to honor their gods. And then in many other ways, it was a lot like the ways that the Aztecs lived. These were the people of this is the civilization of the Mayans. Okay? All right, I could go on for a very long time about them, but these are just some of the basics that you can learn about the Mayans. If you want to learn more about them yourself, there's plenty of places where you can look them up. So for now, how about if we go over our questions for today? Question number 1, what sort of buildings are the Mayans most famous for? That would be their stone temples. Question number 2, what is their most famous city? That is the city of Teotihuacan. I will leave it up here for a little bit because it's hard to spell. If I just could come up to you and say Teotihuacan, you would probably have no idea how to spell it. But here it is now for you to write down. Okay. And the last question, what were their 2 most famous heroes? I'm not going to make you write their names down. But we will call them the Hero Twins. That's what they called them, the Hero Twins. All right, well, as usual, there's no history class tomorrow, but on Thursday, we will talk about what happened to the Mayans when the Spanish came. And we'll see what happened to them there. All right, so have a good rest of the day, and I will see you on Thursday. Goodbye.